So, hello everyone. I see the number of participants rising. Thanks for joining. Can you see all the presentation on the screen? I hope so. Lina, just give me a quick sign if you can see this. Perfect. Great. So then I would say welcome everyone to our third episode of this TUMIVolt Charging Station webinar. Today's topic is the battle for e-mobility, fuel cell electric vehicles versus battery electric vehicles. My name is Marvin Stolz and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I work for TUMIVolt, which is a global project at GIZ. I work there as e-mobility advisor, and we form part as TUMIVolt as the e-mobility branch for the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, TUMI. Here we focus on the improvement of framework conditions for electric mobility in emerging and developing countries. And I would say, let's first have a look on what we are planning to do over the next hour in this webinar. So here you can see the agenda overview. After a short introduction, we will directly start with the expert presentation from our speaker, Professor Dr. Jürgen Garche, who I will also introduce in a second. And afterwards, we will then go into the live Q&A session, which my colleague Lena Stiller will moderate. At the TUMIVolt Charging Station, of course, our goal is to charge up everyone's knowledge around all things of e-mobility. We already held 2 webinars about raw materials and future battery technology. Sorry, some technical problems here. Sorry for the disruption. And you, of course, can also find those episodes on YouTube on our TUMI YouTube channel. For today's charging station, we chose a rather, I would say, provocative title, which is the battle for e-mobility. And with battle, we refer to the discussions about one key question, which many mobility experts around the globe try to answer. And this is, which technology will drive the future of mobility? Will it be run by fuel cell electric vehicles, or will future mobility mainly rely on battery electric vehicles? You see, both propulsion technologies have their similarities and differences, of course, but can be summarized under the category of electric mobility. Both technologies essentially use electricity to power electric motors, which then drive all kinds of vehicles like cars, trucks, and potentially even beyond that. Both technologies also can bring us closer to carbon neutrality, but nevertheless, we are observing that there's a lot of debate which technology is the best or the most suited for the future. And from my point of view, supporters from both sides sometimes show very strong opinions about the opposing technology. Both sides say their technology is the best option in terms of sustainability or in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of costs, etc., etc. And apparently it's not easy to navigate through all these different arguments, and therefore we try to dive a bit deeper today with this episode into this competition of propulsion technologies, because we believe that it's a highly relevant topic in the field of e-mobility and also in the context of development cooperation. And as you already may have seen in the announcement for the webinar, we decided to split this episode into 2 parts. In part 1, so today we will answer how and if fuel cell electric vehicles can be used for sustainable development in the mobility sector, and in what application cases and also for what vehicle types this makes the most sense. And part 2, which will be held in September 16, will then focus on the potential of battery electric vehicles for sustainable mobility applications and shed light on both technologies as well. So to start with our topic of today, I'm happy to introduce you to our expert speaker, Professor Dr. Jürgen Garche. He works as independent consultant in the field of fuel cells and batteries, and he has more than 50 years of experience in this field and has also formerly been director of the Electrochemical Energy Storage and Conversion Division of the Center for Solar Energy and Hydrogen Research. In German, it's called ZSW. Further, he acted as deputy speaker of the advisory board of the German National Organization for Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology, NOW GmbH. So I think with his experience, he's an excellent guest speaker for our series, and we're really to have you on board. So a very warm welcome from my side, Professor Garche. But before I hand over to you, just two more technical information for our participants. First, there's a chat function in this webinar, so everyone's more than welcome to put your questions into the chat window. And after the presentation, we will go into the live Q&A session, which Lena will moderate, as mentioned, and we will redirect every question to Professor Garche then. And second point I want to raise before we start, to improve this webinar, we will have a very short survey at the end of the webinar. So if you have a minute to spare, we would really appreciate your feedback to, of course, get better ourselves as well. So yeah, that would be it from my side so far. I think we're ready to start. And with that, I also hand over the control to you, Professor Garche, to share your presentation, which you prepared for today. And I would say the stage would be yours. And thank you very much.
Oh, wait a moment. So, yeah.
Perfect. Now we can see it.
Could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello, everybody. I was introduced, a short introduction again. The most important 50 years battery and fuel cell experience, so I'm an old man. I think 50 years ago, I have never been born. What I am doing, I was retired in 2004. What I am doing, I'm writing books. Here you have an overview about the books. That's the most heaviest book. You see encyclopedia, and 12 kilogram, and 5 volumes, and 120 euro per kilogram. But that is unfortunately not my money. That is the publishing house. The hottest book is the safeties of lithium batteries. Lithium batteries have a very high energy density, but the safety is also an issue. Okay, the content of that introduction in the fuel cell electric vehicle area, you could see that here, starting with electromobility history, the working principles of the fuel cell, different fuel cell types, and then going from the cell via the stack, via the fuel cell system to the fuel cell electric vehicle. And then the final question, battery vehicle or fuel cell vehicle, and then the summary. The history, starting with the history of batteries. The first primary battery was developed by Perry and Volta. You could see it's a system here or here. It was a zinc copper system. The second step in the history is the basic for the fuel cells, the hydrogen water electrolyzers. And you could see 4 people have developed the water electrolysis principle. Why is it late? You need electrical source, electricity source. And that was the water battery, which drove the electrolysis in order to produce hydrogen. And the fuel cell itself was developed by Grove in 1839. So that is the history of the electrochemical power sources and the history of the battery electric vehicle. You could see that here. That is the lead acid battery for that car. And in 1899, the electric car is crossed the 100 kilometer per hour border. And in the time 1910, about 30% of all cars were electric cars. You could see one example here, that is the taxi, and the battery was not charged on board, the battery was changed. And here you have the battery, and then the battery is coming in the car. The fuel cell history started 1959 with the farm tractor, with the 15 kilowatt alkaline fuel cell, and the first car, electro van, you could see on the right side. That was the GM Electrovan with a PEM fuel cell and 32 kilowatt. The interesting one, that was compressed hydrogen for the tractor, and here you could see that is liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. That was starting time, that is, was not usual. Another history point are hydrogen internal combustion engine vehicles. So you have not used gasoline, you use the hydrogen, and you could see the first patent was already 1807 for a hydrogen car, and later you could see that car 1860 one cylinder, two-stroke. The interesting one, at that hydrogen internal combustion engine vehicle, you could see the storage is here, and here was the engine, and the hydrogen was ignited by a Volta battery. So the ignition of the hydrogen air mixture was carried out by the Volta battery. So the patent normally is used for 20 years, and 20 years are over, and therefore BMW has taken over that principle, and you could see so about 20 years ago, BMW presented hydrogen internal combustion engine vehicles. You could see here the principle of the 750 car. That is the liquid hydrogen tank, and that is the engine. The changes of the engine from the gasoline to the hydrogen fuel is very small, and if that principle, the internal combustion hydrogen vehicle, would work very well, that would be easier to introduce the car in the market than the fuel cell vehicle. What is the problem or the problems? You could see that here the combustion temperature of hydrogen is much higher than the combustion temperature of gasoline. And that means at that higher temperature of the hydrogen combustion, you have a higher content of NOx. And in order to reduce the NOx content, you have to reduce the combustion temperature. And that was done by injecting water into the cylinder of the engine. And that injection of the water reduced the efficiency. So the maximum efficiency of that hydrogen internal combustion engine 37%, and that is about the efficiency of the old diesel. And in order to come to 50% efficiency, the BMW people and MAN people and Volvo and so on, there are some car manufacturers which are dealing with or deals with that point to change or to come to higher values. They have specific mixtures of the hydrogen, oxygen, engine modification, but finally all car manufacturers stopped that way with the hydrogen internal combustion engine. So fuel cell working principles is the next topic. What is going on in the fuel cells? The hydrogen and the oxygen is reacting to water, and in that reaction large heat is developed. The heat is so large that normally you have an explosion in that reaction. The hydrogen-oxygen explosion or the German Knallgas explosion. So what you could see here is that it's a direct chemical reaction. The hydrogen reacted with the oxygen. 4 electrons are going from the hydrogen to the oxygen, and you get that high reaction energy. That high reaction energy, unfortunately, that is in German, or that is heat, or that is moving, and that's electricity. That is the traditional way to produce electricity, and from the reaction energy, you get about 30 up to 40% for electricity. That is not too much, and therefore the people has developed the other way. That is the not direct reaction of the hydrogen with the oxygen. That is the indirect reaction. The electrons coming from the hydrogen are going via the load. It could be light or electric engine to the oxygen. And in that way, you could create much more electrical energy, about 30%, theoretical one, but in the practical, we are coming to 50–60%. So the big question is only how that fuel cell path is working. That works in the following way. You extracted the electrons from the hydrogen with the help of a catalyst or with the help of high temperature. And that electrons then are going via the load and going to the oxygen, and with the help of catalyst and also high temperatures. Again, electrons are extracted with the help of catalyst and high temperature, going via the load and going in the oxygen. So in order to have a continuous flow of the charge, we need additional to the electron flow, what you could see here, a flow of the charge through the electrolyte. The electrolyte is normally liquid, and the ions, the protons or the OH ions are transporting the charge. By the way, that is the same working principles for the battery. What you have seen here for the fuel cells, that's the same scheme for the lead acid battery. Also, electrons are going from the lead via the load to the lead dioxide. So the working principles between fuel cell and lead acid battery or batteries in general are the same. So What we have seen here, that was a more schematic view. And if you transfer that schematic view in a real cell, you could see here that is the compartment for the hydrogen, for the oxygen, and between you have the electrolyte. And here in the reaction layer, you have also the catalyst. So, and now that is the most difficult figure in my lecture. The question is which electrolyte we take for the fuel cells. What you could see here, that is the specific conductivity. The larger, the better. The better is the conductivity, and that is the temperature. You could see that in Celsius, and here that is the reverse of the temperature. That is the, we call that Arrhenius curve. That is not important. Important is you need a minimum conductivity from about 1 Siemens per centimeter. If you are lower, then the power of your fuel cell or your battery is too low. So, and if you look into that figure, you see only four different electrolytes which have a higher conductivity than 1 Siemens per centimeter. Additional to that 4 blue points, you have silver. It's a high conductivity, but silver batteries that would be too expensive. So that means we transfer now that for electrolytes in that system. So we could we have proton conductivity, OH conductivity, carbonate conductivity, and oxygen conductivity. And we transfer also the temperatures where that red line is crossed. And you could see the protons on the OH are crossed by about 50 up to 100 centigrade, that line. The carbonate is about at 500 centigrade, and the oxygen at about 1000 centigrade. So, and that temperatures which are related to the crossing the 1 Siemens per centimeter, that are also the operating temperatures of the fuel cells. So, and that is the bring you on the different fuel cell systems. Again, we figured out the 4 electrolytes with the 4 ions, and this oxygen ion, that is the basic for the so-called solid state oxide fuel cell, SOFC. If we're using the carbonate, that is the molten carbonate fuel cell working at 650 centigrade. And if we are using electrolytes with protons on the OH, then you have the phosphoric acid fuel cell, the PEM fuel cell, and the alkaline fuel cell. So what we differentiate now is the temperature lower or higher than 200 centigrade. That is the high temperature fuel cell, and lower than 200 centigrade is the low temperature fuel cell. But with increasing temperature, operating temperature, the efficiency is increasing, and that is a very important parameter, the efficiency. What you could see here, that is the theoretical thermodynamical efficiency is going down with increasing temperature, but in practical, this curve is growing with increasing temperature. That is related to lower resistance at higher temperature. So with the SOFC at about 1000 centigrade, you have about 60–70% efficiency. The other important point for that systems are the start-up time. For example, if you want to start now a fuel cell vehicle, you could do that with the low temperature fuel cells in seconds, 10–20 seconds. But to start up SOFC systems, you need 1 day. So the start-up time is growing with growing temperature, and the dynamics is growing with decreasing temperature. Dynamics, that means I want to change my speed from 50 to 100 km/h, and that is very easy with the low temperature fuel cells, but is nearly impossible in short times with high temperature systems, because the temperature takes influence on the ceramic structure, and if the ceramic structure is changed, then the lifetime is reduced as well. So therefore, the high temperature fuel cells are used for stationary fuel cells. That means for utilities, for residential stationary fuel cell, for heating and electricity. And the low temperature fuel cells with a high dynamic start-up time, not so high efficiency, are used for mobile fuel cells. And the most important of that three low temperature fuel cells is the so-called PEM fuel cell. The PEM fuel cell has a special electrolyte that is a polymer. This is sulfonic acid. So that means it's the acid in the polymer. And that is the special sulfonic acid in the polymer. That is not so important. Important is that part is the polymer, gives that the solid solid aggregate, the solid state, and only that one, that is the functional group, and the functional group that is dissociated in that conductive ion. So only that ion is important for us, and that ion is created from that complicated chemical compound. The power of the voltage of the PEM fuel cell is in the region of 0.5 up to 0.7 volt. For example, the voltage of the lead acid battery is 2 volt, on the lithium-ion battery 3 up to 4 volt, but we need higher voltages in order to drive the car. What we could do, we could connect that in series for higher voltages. So we connect the anode with the cathode in that way by external wire. But you could use also that external wire as a kind of cell wall between cell 1 and cell 2. And that is electronic conductive, and that is so-called the bipolar plate. And all the fuel cell stacks are built up not in that way, they are built up in the bipolar stack way. So you are putting your hydrogen anode part here, then you use the bipolar plate, and step by step you are coming to a PEM fuel cell stack, which you could see here with a higher voltage. So that was the stack, and what you have seen before, that is here. But for working that stacks, you need also additional systems. The air will have to be compressed, and the air has to be humidified in order to have a higher conductivity of the Nafion electrolyte. So, and then you have a second part, that is a hydrogen tank. And for that hydrogen tank, you could use normally, or you could use liquid hydrogen, combination and compressed gas. The liquid hydrogen has the advantage, it has a high specific energy. You could per volume or per mass store a lot of hydrogen, but in the liquid state, that is about minus 270 centigrade, and you have losses by evaporation of that hydrogen at that deep temperature. So per day, about 2–3% of the hydrogen is going out of the system. That is the boil-off loss. And if you are on the airport parking for 2 weeks, then a lot of your hydrogen is evaporated. Therefore, now mostly is used the compressed gas with about 700 bar. So, and your fuel cell system is principally divided in the fuel cell stack with the compressor, humidifier, and so on. And that fuel cell stack gives you the power, gives you the kilowatt. And the energy of the system is given only by the tank, by the hydrogen tank. So you could increase the energy of the system only by increasing the volume of your hydrogen tank or the pressure of the hydrogen tank. That is important because that is not the case in the battery. You could tailor the energy and the power. You have the choice to independent to change the power at constant energy or vice versa. So, and finally, that fuel cell system is integrated in the car. You have the electric engine, or starting with the fuel cell stack. That is, you put that here. Then the hydrogen storage tank, you put that here. And normally, also a battery is integrated in the fuel cell electric vehicle in order to recharge the braking energy. If you brake the car, then that energy is generated via generator in the car and electricity, and that one is stored in the battery. And the battery is also helps the car to accelerate in the beginning of driving. So you have normally in the cars a battery with about 1 kilowatt hour, and then you have the power control unit. That is the figure for the Honda Clarity. So now the question: battery or fuel cell vehicle. That line gives you the energy or the operating time. If you need a larger operating time, you need a larger battery, so the mass is increasing. For the fuel cell, only for the power, the mass of the power is the same. That is independent on the energy. Only the hydrogen tank, that is increasing. So, and in order to see the whole fuel cell system, you have to add that. And you could see for lower operating time, lower energy, you have the same fuel cell, but for higher energy, we have a higher hydrogen tank. So you could see you have a crossing point here. Before the crossing point, you have a lower mass of the battery, and after the crossing point, you have a higher mass of the battery. That means you have a critical time or critical energy. Before that one, the battery is your choice. So that means for short distances and also light cars. And after that point, you have the fuel cell as the choice, and that one is for higher energy and higher operating times. That is for long distance cars and heavy cars. That is shown here. For example, that is the range. If you have a light car in the city, for example, here, that is the battery electric vehicle. If you come also in the city to larger cars, to heavier cars like buses, then you should use the fuel cell. It's the same as with the distance. You could use also such small car, it's a battery car, but if you go to higher ranges, the highway, 400, 500 kilometers, then you need the fuel cell. So again, I'm going back. The battery is for short distances, light cars, and the fuel cell is for long distance and heavy cars. In the meantime, many car manufacturers like Volvo and Daimler developing now fuel cells for trucks, medium trucks, heavy trucks in that region, and that is based off the 30 kilowatt stacks. Commercially, we have, you could see that cars here, the price is in the region of 7,000, 8,000, and the range is 400, 500, up to 600 kilometers. That is the last one. For Hyundai, about 750 kilometers. So shortly to the cost, that is extrapolated for 80 kilowatt stacks, and you could see 2 years ago that was about $50 per kilowatt, and the strongest costs are coming from the catalyst. You could see that here, if you have a higher production rates, then the catalyst costs are reduced, but they are still the highest part of the whole system. The costs are coming also from the system, the fuel cell system. You could see that here this is a very complicated system with electrons, oxygen, water, and the battery is much easier. The cost between the fuel cell electric vehicle and battery electric vehicle is a factor of 2. So electromobility, in the moment, 400 kilometers for the batteries, for the fuel cell 600. If you look to the efficiency, the fuel cell electric vehicle in the fossil area is more efficient. In the regenerative area, the efficiency of the battery is much higher. Battery cars than the efficiency of the fuel cell vehicle. You could see that here. The reason for that is the high efficiency of the battery. The efficiency of the fuel cell is only 50%. So, and so you have the contradiction of range and efficiency, and so the car manufacturers are developing city cars with the battery and long range and heavy cars for the fuel cell. The status quo is for 2018 only 8,000 fuel cell cars but 5.5 million battery electric vehicles. So summary, that is the last one. We have no battle between the fuel cell electric vehicle and battery electric vehicles. The fuel cells are for long distance and heavy vehicle, and the battery is for shorter distance and lighter vehicles. And the market introduction for the fuel cell electric vehicles is in about 5 up to 10 years. But the market introduction for battery vehicles, that is now. So thank you very much for your attention. Oh, a little bit longer, sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor Garche, for this interesting presentation and giving us a good overview about the history and also the working principles of fuel cells. I think now we directly dive into the Q&A part. And I'm sure we have a lot of questions from the participants, which Lena collected and will redirect to you now. To all of you who still have questions, feel free to write them into the chat box now, and then we are happy to answer them as much as possible. So I think with that, Lena, I would hand over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for that presentation, Professor Dr. Garche. I think we have a very different range of questions, but I think they will nicely accompany your presentation because I think they will cover various aspects of what you've talked about. So one question that we received is, in Germany, currently 95% of hydrogen is produced from fossil natural gas, which increases CO2 emissions instead of reducing them. How do you assess how fast we can switch to 100% renewable or so-called green hydrogen?
Yeah, this is not only in Germany, this is nearly worldwide. We have at the moment, around 95% of the hydrogen, the green hydrogen is coming from the fossils, and the switch to the renewable or to the green hydrogen, that depends from the cost. So in the moment, the cost of the green hydrogen is a factor of 2 larger than of the fossil, the grey hydrogen, and we have to come down. Ways to come down with the cost are the cost of the electrolyzers, which we have shown in the beginning, 18 up to 18.6, the first electrolyzer was developed. But because the grey hydrogen from the fossil is so cheap, nobody has really developed efficient electrolyzers. So now we are developing efficient electrolyzers, cheaper, more efficient, and step by step, I think during the next 10 years, we will have about, let's say, 20–30% green hydrogen in Germany. And that is a real success, which is also driven by the introduction of the renewable in the electric grid. Now we have about 30–35% electricity in the German grid coming from renewable.
So the 100% is still a bit off in the future, in your opinion?
We have, besides the grey, the fossil one, and the green one, also the so-called blue one. That is fossil hydrogen, where the carbon dioxide is stored under the sea, under the air, and different storage systems. So that could be a period from the grey to the green one, the carbon dioxide capture.
So another question I have here is, how do you assess the production capacities and the motivation of the private sector, for example, car, bus, or truck manufacturers, to produce enough fuel cell vehicles to reach sustainable and carbon neutral mobility?
Yeah, this is like in every product, the cost is determined. The motivation, you have in every country a group of so-called freaks, which likes the renewable cars and the renewable energy, but the average of the people, if they was asking about 2,000 people how much you will pay more for sustainability, 5 up to 10%. The people were willing to pay more for the better environmental technology. And the same as we have here, we have to come down with the cost, and political framework could regulate it as well. We have now the reduced prices from about up to 10,000 euro for batteries and fuel cell electric vehicle cars. So again, political framework and cost reduction, that are the ways to come to higher numbers of not of produced cars, of sold cars, because that is the problem. To producing cars, I talked to a manager from Toyota about 5 years ago, because he announced a small series of cars, and I asked him, and he told me we can produce 100,000 fuel cell cars per year, but our economists told us we can't sell 100,000 cars per year. But Hyundai has a strong target for 2030. They want to produce per year 700,000 fuel cell cars. And I'm sure they are coming in that region, maybe not 700, but 500,000 cars.
I have one other question here, which I think goes very well with what you just elaborated on. So one participant asked, how do you suggest to close the cost gap for fuel cell trucks other than subsidies?
Again, sorry?
So the question is, if you have any idea of how this cost gap could be closed other than with subsidies. So you've already mentioned that policy measures are important to encourage people to switch to a different buying behavior. Is there anything else other than subsidies that you see that could potentially reduce this cost gap that you're describing?
Yeah, if you remember that figure where I show the large cost of the fuel cell system, which were related to the catalyst. So we started at about, I remember 20 years ago, we started with 10 milligram platinum per square centimeter. Now we are in the region of 0.1 gram platinum per square centimeter. That is even too much. But the R&D labs are working now on platinum-free catalyst. So that big part of the cost, the catalyst could become down. And then besides that, you have, of course, also the mass production effect, which is not related to the materials, of course, but related to the process. And so you could come down to the cost, to the region of the battery costs, but not yet. I think we need about 10 years to come with the cost, not with the political framework, with the real cost in the region of the internal combustion engine and in the region of the battery electric vehicle.
Mm-hmm. And there's one more question going in a similar direction, or asking also about sort of the market readiness. So looking at fuel cell manufacturing, most of the economies of scale are achieved with a single plant volume of 50 to 100,000 units a year. How does that relate to overall market volume? So what are the annual sales volumes that you think are needed in order to reach a plant of that size?
Yeah, that is related to what I mentioned. The market volume is not the production volume. The market volume is that volume of cars which you could sell. And that depends on, again, of the cost and from the political framework. I repeated that. Political framework is not only the reduced or additional 10,000 euro for buying a car, but it is also the introduction in the downtown, in the cities. That is the use of special lines on the roads and so on. And that depends on the and that gives you then the production volume. That is not from the technical point of view. From the technical point of view, I mentioned that the big OEMs are ready to produce 100,000 cars, but you have to sell that, and you and I, we have to buy it, and we will do it if we see any advantage. That advantage is could be the environment, of course, and should be or could be also the cost, not the investment cost, also the cost for the fuel. The cost for the fuel is relatively high at the moment. We pay in Germany about 9 euro per kilogram hydrogen, and that price has to, that cost has to, that price has to go down to about 4 and 3. Then the motivation for all of us is high enough to buy cars, and then the production volume will increase. But you have seen 2 years ago we have about summarized, integrated 8,000 or 6,000 cars. That is not too much.
And that's a significant decrease that you're describing, from 9 down to 4 or 3. Yeah. So another question we have here is, how do you see the future development potential of both technologies, so battery electric and the fuel cell technology, regarding the tipping point of the range and application? Is one more promising than the other?
Another big problem. Let's say we are coming to the point of the same cost of battery and the fuel cell car. In the moment, we have now 6 million, or 2 years ago 5.5 million battery electric vehicle, and so the infrastructure is in the moment related to the battery electric vehicle. We are building charge station, fast charge station, the shops and the repairing shops are related to battery electric vehicle. And if in 10 years, for example, the fuel cell car is competitive, then most of the people are related related to the battery cars. So the community doesn't speak in the moment about the normal people does not speak about fuel cell cars. All people speaking now about the battery car. And in 10 years, I hope that a window of opportunity to come on the market will be still open. So that means we have also hydrogen infrastructure. So we have enough gasoline, we have enough hydrogen stations, and that infrastructure is the second point for the motivation to buy such a car. If you buy now a battery car, you could in Germany, or not only in Germany, you could charge the car on every point where you have a grid. But the hydrogen car, you could charge only in a hydrogen station. Fortunately, in Germany, we have now about 100 hydrogen stations. But that is not yet enough to push the motivation. That is, if you think back for the introduction of lead-free gasoline, that was the same situation. You buy a new technology which works only with gasoline, which without the lead to use the octane number, and you have no stations, gasoline stations, with lead-free gasoline. So step by step, that takes time. And from my point of view, in Germany, there is a good political framework, but we need about 5 to 10 years to come on the same level like the battery cars. And again, the battery cars are the cars for the short distances. So for the city, and yeah, up to 300-400 kilometers. And the fuel cell cars that are trucks and so on, that is not so related to the private people, that is more related to the industrial people. So bus production or bus lines and taxis and so on. So the future for the private people which are using the car as a second car, that will be a battery car. If you drive long distances and heavier cars, that will be the fuel cell car.
There's one more question that I think we can make within the time remaining. The question is, what is the round trip efficiency of hydrogen? Can it ever be in par with battery electric vehicles, and how?
I have shown that before. The round trip efficiency, let's say you have the grid, the electricity is coming with 100%, yeah. Then for the production of hydrogen via gasoline, via the electrolyzers, that is 75%. So you have a loss of 25. Then you have about, let's say, a loss of 10-20% by transporting the hydrogen from the electrolyzers to the hydrogen station, filling station. That is a loss of 40 or 50%, and then the efficiency of the fuel cell is about 50%, so you have 25-30%. For the battery, that is the interesting, the battery loss. You take the current, the renewable current, bring it in the battery and charge it and discharge that. The loss is 5 up to 10%. So, and then again, you have DC-AC losses and so on. altogether battery cars, for battery cars, the overall efficiency is 75%, and for the fuel cell electric vehicle cars, it's about 30-35%. So let's say 1 to 2 about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Marvin, I think in the interest of time, I hand over to you. Thanks, Professor Dr. Garche, for answering all these questions. Yeah, back to you, Marvin.
Thank you very much to Lena and Professor Garche for this interesting Q&A session. We will, of course, try to answer all open questions in a follow-up email if there are still open questions. And if you want to learn more, you can also find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, etc. And yeah, we hope that you enjoyed this first episode, or this first part of this episode, the battle for e-mobility. And of course, we invite you to join the second part, which will be held on September 16. And I will also post the link in a second into this chat box, and you will get a follow-up email as well. Yes, and I think thank you very much again to all of you for participating and your interest. And on that note, I'm saying thank you very much and see you for part 2 of this charging station. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.